Chapter 1. The old oak tree, stout and strong, had always been more than just a tree to the bear family. It was their home, their haven, their very heart. Nestled high amidst its whispering leaves and sturdy branches was their cozy treehouse, a place where warmth bloomed like a perpetual summer day, no matter the season. As evening's gentle shadows began to lengthen, painting the forest floor in hues of deep violet and sleepy grey, a comforting glow spilled from the treehouse windows, a beacon against the encroaching night. Inside, the air was thick with the most wonderful smells, a lingering sweetness of Mama Bear's freshly baked honey cakes still warm from the oven, mingling with the earthy scent of beeswax candles and the faintest hint of pine from the wood-paneled walls. The gentle rhythm of the day winding down filled every nook and cranny. Mama Bear, her fur the color of warm honey, moved with a quiet grace, her paws soft and sure as she helped her two little cubs get ready for bed. Brother Bear, sturdy and a little bit rumpled, with fur the shade of toasted marshmallows, was already nestled under his patchwork quilt, a tiny crumb of honey cake still clinging to the corner of his mouth. Beside him, in a bed just as snug, Sister Bear, with her soft brown fur and wide, curious eyes, snuggled down, her favorite worn teddy bear clutched tight to her chest. Their beds, crafted from sturdy timber and piled high with feather-light pillows and soft woolen blankets, looked like little clouds, inviting sweet dreams. Mama Bear smoothed Brother Bear's quilt, tucking it snugly around his shoulders. "There, my dear," she murmured, her voice a low, comforting hum, like a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves of the great oak. Then she moved to Sister Bear, pulling the soft blanket up to her chin, her paw stroking the sleepy cub's head. "Snug as two little bugs in a rug, aren't you?" she chuckled softly. As the last tucks were made and the room grew dim, bathed only in the soft, flickering light of a single bedside lantern, Mama Bear sat on the edge of Brother Bear's bed, opening a well-loved storybook. Its pages, worn soft from countless readings, whispered tales of brave forest creatures and kind-hearted sprites. "Tonight, my little ones," she began, her voice dropping to a melodious storyteller's cadence, "we'll read about Bartholomew Bear and the Whispering Waterfall." The children's eyelids, heavy with the day's adventures, fluttered as Mama Bear's soothing voice filled the quiet room. The story began, painting vivid pictures in their minds of cool mountain springs and sun-dappled glades. But as Mama Bear turned a page, a subtle shift occurred outside their cozy haven. A gentle breeze, which had been merely rustling the leaves, began to sigh a little louder, a low moan winding its way through the branches of the old oak. Then, a soft patter began against the window pane. Just a few drops at first, like tiny tapping fingers, then more, growing into a steady, rhythmic drumming. Mama Bear paused for a moment, her eyes darting towards the window, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. She quickly resumed the story, her voice unwavering, but the children, with their keen, sensitive senses, noticed the almost imperceptible tightening of her grip on the book, the slight hesitation before she continued. They were usually so close to sleep at this hour, their bodies heavy with slumber, but tonight a peculiar alertness settled upon them. Brother Bear, ever the bolder one, broke the comfortable silence. "Mama," he mumbled, his voice thick with the cusp of sleep. "Is that the wind getting bigger?" Sister Bear, her eyes wide, echoed his thought. "And rain, Mama? Is it raining hard?" She looked at Mama Bear, then at the window, where the rain was now tracing silvery streaks down the glass. Mama Bear smiled, a warm, reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a little blustery weather, my dears," she said, her voice smooth and calm. She closed the book gently, setting it aside. "But it reminds me," she paused, taking a deep breath. "It reminds me of Papa Bear." The mention of Papa Bear always brought a spark of excitement to their sleepy eyes. Papa Bear, with his strong paws and his hearty laugh, was a brave and experienced mariner. He often sailed the wide blue ocean, exploring distant shores and charting new courses. He was their hero, a figure of incredible strength and adventurous spirit, though currently far away. "Is Papa Bear out in the wind, Mama?" Sister Bear asked, her little brow furrowing with a tiny hint of worry. "Is he cold?" "No, sweet pea," Mama Bear soothed, pulling Sister Bear closer for a quick, comforting hug. "Papa Bear knows the sea like the back of his own paw. He's sailed through gales and squalls, through fogs thicker than Mama Bear's berry jam, and he always finds his way home." Her voice swelled with pride and unwavering faith as she spoke of him. Why, Papa Bear can read the clouds like a book, and he understands the waves' whispers. He knows which stars to follow when the moon hides its face, and he can smell a safe harbor from miles away. She painted a vivid picture of Papa Bear standing tall at the helm of his sturdy ship, the seaworthy bear. His weathered fur glistening with sea spray, his eyes sharp and bright as he navigated through the wildest of waters. She spoke of his strength, his wisdom, his deep connection to the ocean that was both his calling and his challenge. She described how he lashed down the sails with mighty knots only he knew, how he hummed a little tune as the waves crashed against his hull, how he never, ever lost his bearings. Her words were a comforting balm, weaving a tapestry of courage and competence around the absent Papa Bear. But even as she spoke with such unwavering conviction, a tiny seed of worry, no bigger than a single mustard seed, began to sprout in her own heart. The wind outside was no longer just sighing, it was howling, a deep, mournful sound that reverberated through the very timbers of the treehouse. The rain was not just pattering, it was lashing, drumming against the windows and the sturdy oak trunk with a relentless intensity. This storm, she mused silently, felt different, louder, wilder. Her internal compass, usually so steady, wavered ever so slightly. Yet, Mama Bear was a beacon of warmth and security herself. She would not let that tiny seed of worry blossom into a full-grown fear, not when her precious cubs were looking to her for comfort. With a deliberate, reassuring slowness, she rose from the bedside. "Now then," she announced, her voice firm and calm, "let's make our cozy home even cozier." With a soft swish and a gentle snap, she pulled the heavy, insulated curtains tighter across the windows, shutting out the swirling chaos of the night. The sound of the wind, though still present, became muffled, transformed into a distant, comforting roar like a faraway ocean. She then walked over to a small shelf, taking down another lantern, its brass casing polished to a soft gleam. With a click and a gentle puff, she lit the wick. A soft, golden glow immediately filled the room, chasing away the last vestiges of shadow, making the familiar toys and books seem even more friendly and inviting. The warm light danced on the wooden walls, making the treehouse feel like a glowing ember, protected from the tempest outside. "Remember, my dears," Mama Bear said, her voice soft but clear, as she placed the extra lantern on the chest between their beds, casting a warm halo over their sleepy faces. "Papa Bear might be far away on the sea, but he's always, always with us, and we are always, always with him." She sat back down, gently stroking Brother Bear's head. "Then Sister Bears, our family is like a ship sailing through life's waters. And the love we have for each other, that's our strongest sail, our unbreakable anchor, and our brightest light." She leaned in closer, her voice a tender whisper. "Papa Bear carries our love with him, you see, tucked safe in his heart, right next to his compass. It's like a special charm that keeps him safe, no matter how wild the waves get. And just as he carries our love, we hold him close in our hearts, right here at home. Our love," she continued, her gaze fixed on the warm, steady glow of the lanterns, "is like a strong lighthouse beam. You know the one, don't you? The big, bright light way out on Gull's Point that shines across the darkest nights to guide the ships home." Brother Bear nodded sleepily, his eyes barely open. Sister Bear gave a little hum of agreement, picturing the majestic lighthouse, its powerful beam sweeping across the inky blackness of the sea. "Well," Mama Bear smiled, "our love for Papa Bear is just like that. It shines out across the wide blue ocean, a steady, unwavering light. It tells him, 'We are here, Papa Bear. We are waiting. Find your way back to your harbor, to your home, to us.' It guides him safely back, through every wave and every storm, right to our very own dock." Her words, infused with such deep love and conviction, wove a magic spell of security around the two sleepy cubs. The howling wind outside no longer sounded quite so menacing, and the lashing rain seemed to sing a lullaby against the window pane. Their tiny worries, gently coaxed away by Mama Bear's steadfast reassurance, dissolved into the comfortable warmth of the treehouse. Brother Bear let out a contented sigh, his breathing evening out into the soft rhythm of sleep. Sister Bear snuggled deeper into her blankets, her teddy bear still clutched tight, a tiny smile gracing her lips. Their dreams, no doubt, were already filled with images of their brave Papa Bear navigating shining seas, guided by the luminous beacon of their family's enduring love. When their soft, even breathing confirmed they were truly lost to the land of dreams, Mama Bear gently kissed each little forehead. She rose, moving with silent footsteps to the armchair by the window. She didn't open the curtains, preferring the illusion of calm within her sanctuary, but she sat there, listening. The storm raged on, a tempestuous symphony of wind and rain. Her paw rested on her chest, right over her heart, a silent gesture of connection. Her gaze, though fixed on the dark, rain-streaked wood of the window frame, saw far beyond it. Her thoughts, like little ships, sailed on the wind, carrying all her hopes, all her unwavering love, and a quiet, steadfast prayer out across the churning, tumultuous night towards her beloved mariner, Papa Bear. She knew he was out there, and she knew, with every fiber of her being, that their lighthouse of love would bring him home. Chapter 2. The vast, shimmering canvas of the ocean, stretching endlessly beneath a sky of unimaginable grandeur, was a sight that Captain Horatio Seaworthy knew as intimately as the lines etched into his weathered hands. For decades he had sailed its surface, navigated its currents, and deciphered its ever-shifting moods, his heart beating in rhythm with the ebb and flow of the tides. Tonight, as the sun began its majestic, stately descent towards the horizon, it painted the very edge of the world with strokes of such fiery orange and soft, dreamlike purples that it seemed to set the sky itself ablaze. Golden light spilled across the water, turning the gentle undulations of the waves into molten gold. And hunting guiding star, his sturdy, reliable schooner, glided effortlessly, her sails catching the last languid breath of the day. But Captain Seaworthy, his gaze not fixed on the spectacular display of color, but on the subtle nuances of the distant horizon, felt a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the air. His experienced eyes, narrowed slightly against the lingering brilliance, weren't just observing beauty, they were reading the ocean's silent language. The rhythmic rocking of an guiding star, usually a comforting, hypnotic sway that lulled the soul, began to feel different. A new, more urgent pulse seemed to enter its role, a tiny, almost imperceptible hastening in its dip and rise. The wind, which had earlier hummed a sweet, lullaby-like tune through the rigging, now began to gather a little more voice, its song deepening, growing more insistent, a low, resonant murmur that promised more than a gentle breeze. And the clouds, oh, the clouds. Earlier in the day, they had drifted across the vast cerulean dome like playful, fluffy sheep, innocent and white, casting soft, dappled shadows on the endless blue. Now, as the sun dipped lower, those same clouds began to gather with a newfound seriousness. From the west, where the sun was preparing its grand farewell, dark smudges appeared, bruised greys and deep indigos bleeding into the vibrant sunset hues. They weren't just fluffy anymore. They were coalescing, thickening, spreading their shadowy fingers across the sky with a deliberate, almost purposeful intent. Captain Seaworthy, a man of few words but profound understanding, didn't need a barometer to tell him what was coming. The very air had changed. It felt heavier, charged with an invisible energy. A sudden, sharp chill, not associated with the fading warmth of the sun, prickled his skin. He watched as the surface of the water, no longer a mirror of the fiery sky, took on a deeper, more turbulent sheen, the gentle swells growing subtly larger, their tips just beginning to feather with nascent whitecaps. He strode to the rail, his gait steady and accustomed to the ship's movements, even the newly urgent ones. His hand, calloused from years of gripping ropes and helms, rested on the smooth, salt-weathered wood. A single large drop of rain, cold and distinct, splattered on the back of his hand, followed quickly by another, then a scattered handful. They left dark, temporary stains on the sun-baked deck. It wasn't a sprinkle, it was a prelude, a grand, dramatic curtain raiser to something much more significant. A true tempest was brewing, gathering its formidable strength somewhere beyond the horizon, its approach heralded by these growing signs. Despite the immediate challenge unfolding around him, the rising wind, the darkening sky, the increasingly boisterous sea, Captain Seaworthy's first Thoughts drifted not to the intricate network of his sturdy vessel's ropes and sails, nor to the preparations for riding out the storm. Instead, his mind, with an almost defiant tenderness, turned to the distant shore, to his beloved wife Clara and their two precious children, Lily and Tom. He pictured their cozy seaside cottage nestled amongst the dunes, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. He imagined Clara's gentle smile, the way Lily's eyes would sparkle with curiosity, and Tom's sturdy, earnest little face. A gentle ache of love, profound and sweet, settled in his chest, a comforting counterpoint to the growing unease of the sea. This ache wasn't one of worry, but of a deep, abiding connection. It was this love, this profound bond with his family, that truly strengthened his spirit, providing a quiet, unwavering resolve for the journey ahead, reminding him of what awaited him beyond the storm's fury. He had a home to return to, a family to embrace, and that knowledge was a compass more true than any instrument on his ship. He took a deep breath, the salty air now carrying the sharp scent of an impending squall, and squared his shoulders, ready for whatever the ocean had in store. Back in the warm, comforting embrace of their home by the sea, nestled like a seashell against the whispering dunes, Mama Clara and the children, Lily and Tom, were settling into their comforting evening routine. The cottage, built with sturdy stones and polished driftwood, always felt like a haven, a place where the outside world, even the mighty ocean, became a gentle, distant hum. The hearth, glowing with the friendly warmth of crackling oak logs, cast dancing shadows on the walls, making familiar objects seem to wink and nod. A gentle aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the scent of beeswax polish, creating an atmosphere of profound tranquility. Lily, her bright eyes usually absorbed in the illustrations of a well-worn storybook, sat cross-legged on the thick rug before the fire. She was meticulously arranging a collection of perfectly smooth sea-worn pebbles, each one a different shade of grey and brown, into a miniature landscape. Her younger brother, Tom, a sturdy little fellow with a perpetually curious gleam in his eyes, was nestled close to Mama Clara's side on the large, squashy armchair. He was attempting, with earnest concentration, to tie a knot in a piece of twine, his small fingers fumbling with the loops, his tongue poking out just a little in intense focus. Mama Clara, her hands moving with the practiced grace of years, was engaged in her own quiet ritual. Her knitting needles, thin and shining like silver fish, clicked softly, a rhythmic counterpoint to the gentle hiss and pop of the fire. A skein of deep blue wool, the color of the midnight sea, lay draped in her lap, slowly transforming into what promised to be a warm, thick scarf. Perhaps for a chilly evening by the hearth, or perhaps, though she didn't voice the thought, for a certain captain who often faced blustery winds. The familiar lullaby of the waves outside, a constant soothing whisper that had accompanied their lives since birth, began to intensify. It was no longer a gentle murmur, it swelled, growing in volume, each crash against the shore a little more pronounced, a little more urgent, and the wind, which usually sighed wistfully through the eaves of the cottage, now began to whistle a more insistent tune. It wasn't a mournful sound, but it was certainly more demanding, pushing against the windows with subtle force, causing the old timbers of the house to creak and groan, like an old friend stretching after a long nap. Lily, always keenly observant, paused her pebble arrangement. Her head tilted slightly, her ear turned towards the window. The changing sound of the wind, now a stronger, more insistent hoot, caught her attention. Her small brow furrowed in a moment of innocent curiosity. She pushed herself up and walked to the window, peering out into the twilight. Her breath fogged a little patch on the cool glass, and she rubbed it away with the sleeve of her nightgown. What she saw made her eyes widen just a little. The sky, which moments ago had held the last vestiges of twilight's gentle blue, was darkening unusually fast. It wasn't the slow, graceful descent into night she was accustomed to. It was a rapid, almost anxious shift to a deeper, more foreboding slate grey. And on the water, where the last golden streaks of sunset had faded, the whitecaps were growing larger, their foamy crowns more pronounced, racing towards the shore like a frantic, frothing army. "Mama," Lily murmured, her voice soft, a hint of wonder and a touch of something else, something akin to respectful awe in her tone. "The sky is getting very dark, very quickly. And the waves are so tall," Tom, having finally succeeded in tying a clumsy but identifiable knot in his twine, looked up, alerted by his sister's quiet observation. He glanced towards the window, then back at the fire. Despite the warmth of the crackling fireplace, the sudden change in the sounds outside, the deeper roar of the waves, the insistent whine of the wind, made a little shiver dance down his spine. He instinctively leaned a little closer into Mama Clara's side, seeking the familiar warmth and comfort of her presence. He didn't quite understand the change, but he felt it, a tiny prickle of unknown energy in the air. Mama Clara, her hands still moving with their steady, practiced rhythm, had felt the shift in the air long before the children had voiced their observations. Her heart, so finely tuned to the rhythms of her home and her family, had felt a subtle tightening within her chest. With a sigh that was barely a whisper, a sound softer than the rustle of dry leaves, she continued to knit, but her fingers, without conscious command, began to move a little faster. Each stitch became a quiet act of love, a silent prayer woven into the fabric. Her mind, like the gathering clouds outside, had turned. Her heart felt a gentle tug of worry, not a consuming fear, but a tender maternal concern for Captain Seaworthy, out there on the vast churning ocean. She knew his strength, his wisdom, his intimate knowledge of the sea, but the ocean, in its wild moods, respected no one. She reached out a hand, her fingers gentle and warm, and smoothed Lily's hair as the girl returned from the window, her expression still thoughtful. "Yes, my love," Mama Clara said, her voice a calm balm, as steady as the lighthouse beam. "It looks like the ocean is getting ready for a big stretch and a good roar tonight. Sometimes, after a very calm day, the wind likes to show us how strong it can be." She paused, her eyes meeting Lily's, a soft, knowing smile playing on her lips. "But our cottage is strong and warm, isn't it? And we are all safe and cozy here together." She then turned her gaze to Tom, who was now holding up his knot with a triumphant, if slightly wobbly, grin. "And Tom has made a very fine, strong knot," she praised, her voice wrapping around him like a warm blanket. "Just the kind of knot a brave sailor would tie." Tom beamed, the shiver forgotten for a moment. Though the storm had not yet fully arrived on shore, only its distant rumblings and subtle shifts in the air had reached their quiet haven. The growing sounds and signs outside served as a quiet, loving reminder of their dear one out on the vast, churning ocean. The rising wind seemed to carry Captain Seaworthy's very essence, his strength and his spirit, into the cottage. The roar of the waves, though louder, was not a threat, but a shared experience, a common rhythm that connected them across the miles. It fostered a silent, comforting connection, a profound understanding that even as the world outside grew wild and tumultuous, their bond remained unwavering, binding them even closer together in the safety and warmth of their home, a testament to the enduring power of family love that stretched across land and sea. Each gust of wind, each crash of a wave, became a whispered message, a reaffirmation of their love, a quiet promise of his eventual return. The storm, though brewing, was merely a backdrop to the quiet, powerful love that filled the cottage to its very rafters. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The Heart of the Storm. The wild storm, aptly named the Grizzly Squall by old-timers who knew the sea's temper like the back of their paw, had reached its roaring, shuddering peak. Out on the vast, churning expanse of the ocean of wonders, Papa Bear Mariner, a figure of steadfast resolve, was lashed securely to the helm of his beloved vessel, the Salty Bear. The sturdy, broad-beamed ship, built with timbers as tough as the oldest mountain pines and painted a cheerful blue that now seemed swallowed by the grey, tormented sea, groaned and shuddered beneath him. Mountainous waves, towering walls of water crowned with frothing, venomous white, rose from the depths, threatening to swallow the Salty Bear whole. They crashed down with the force of 1,000 angry giants, sending sprays of icy brine high into the tormented air, only for the howling wind to snatch them away like forgotten whispers. Rain, thick as a winter blanket, hammered against the thick timbers of the Salty Bear, not in drops, but in solid, unbroken sheets that cascaded down the mast and sluiced over the deck. It felt less like water and more like countless tiny pebbles, each one stinging as it struck Papa Bear's weather-beaten fur. The wind, a furious, invisible beast, shrieked through the rigging like a hungry wolf, pulling at his ears, tearing at his sou'wester, and trying with all its might to rip the tiller from his powerful grip. It was a symphony of chaos, a relentless, terrifying crescendo that filled the air and vibrated through the very bones of the ship. Yet, amidst this swirling, deafening pandemonium, Papa Bear's mind remained remarkably clear. It was as if the sheer intensity of the storm had sharpened his senses, cutting away all frivolous thoughts and leaving only sharp focus. His gaze, though blurred by the rain and spray, scanned the tumultuous horizon, assessing the next monumental swell, anticipating the cruel twist of the wind. Every muscle in his powerful forearms strained as he fought the tiller, coaxing the salty bear to ride the waves, to climb their impossible heights and surf down their steep, watery slopes without being capsized. He was dancing with the storm, a desperate, dangerous jig where one misstep could mean disaster. With each thunderous crash of wave against hull, Papa Bear found his thoughts drifting, not to fear, but to the comforting wisdom of generations. He remembered the countless stories of the sea, spun like fine fishing nets from his own Papa Bear. He pictured him, a bear whose fur was as grizzled as the oldest oak and whose laugh was as warm as a summer's day, sitting by a crackling hearth, his voice a low rumble like the comforting churn of ocean waves. "The cold, my boy," his Papa Bear had rumbled, a paw resting on young Papa Bear's shoulder. "It gets into your bones, yes, and the fear can get into your heart too if you let it. But if your heart is full of warmth and kindness, that's the truest shield against any storm, inside or out. Remember, a good heart is the best compass, always pointing you home." And home, oh, how he longed for home. That thought, that precious, shimmering image of his dear family, was a steady anchor in his brave heart. It held him fast, even as the salty bear pitched and rolled and bucked like a wild stallion, even as the cold, unforgiving sea tried its best to drag him down into its murky embrace. He knew Mama Bear, Brother Bear, and Sister Bear were waiting, warm and safe in their cozy lighthouse home, and that knowledge was a powerful, invisible hand guiding his own through the tumultuous water, strengthening his resolve against the relentless fury of the Grizzly Squall. Every gust of wind, every wall of water, he met with a steadfastness born not just of strength, but of profound love. Back at their cozy lighthouse home, nestled on a sturdy cliff overlooking the very same churning ocean of wonders, Mama Bear, Brother Bear, and Sister Bear felt the full, rattling fury of the storm. The lighthouse, a beacon of safety and warmth, stood firm against the onslaught, but even its thick stone walls vibrated with the storm's incredible power. The wind, a relentless, insistent presence, howled around the top of the tower, rattling the heavy, reinforced windows of their living room with a sound like 100 tiny drums beating frantically. The rain, not just falling but horizontal, streamed down the glass panes, blurring the outside world into a chaotic smear of grey and white. It drummed a relentless, heavy tune on the roof, a ceaseless, monotonous rhythm that pulsed through the very foundations of their home. Inside, however, a contrasting picture of warmth and comfort shone brightly. A warm fire crackled cheerfully in the hearth, its flames dancing and flickering, casting a golden, buttery glow across the room. The scent of burning oak and a hint of warm honey oat cookies, recently baked by Mama Bear, filled the air, mingling with the comforting smell of old books and home. Mama Bear, her fur a comforting shade of soft brown, sat in her favorite armchair, its plush cushions worn smooth from countless hours of storytelling. In her paws, she held a large, beautifully illustrated book titled The Brave Explorers of the Sunlit Peaks. Her voice, a soothing, melodic hum, filled the room as she read about courage and adventure, her words a gentle balm against the storm's wild clamor. Brother Bear, normally a whirlwind of energy, was unusually quiet tonight. He sat cross-legged on the thick, braided rug by the fireplace, pretending to be deeply engrossed in his wooden train set, pushing the little engine along its tracks with a serious, furrowed brow. But every now and then, his bright, curious eyes would dart towards the window, straining to see past the swirling, impenetrable curtain of rain, as if he could somehow magically pierce the storm and glimpse his Papa Bear sailing home. A quiet worry, soft as a new-fallen snowflake, settled over him, a feeling he couldn't quite name but which made his tummy feel a little fluttery. He heard the wind's mournful wail and imagined Papa Bear out there, battling the very same monstrous gusts. Sister Bear, usually so boisterous and full of chatter, was even more subdued. She sat curled tightly on the sofa beside Mama Bear, her small body pressed close, drawing comfort from her mother's warmth. In her arms, she clutched her most cherished possession, a soft, plush, stuffed puffin named Pippin. She hugged him so tightly that his little felt beak was pressed flat against her chest. She rubbed his soft, downy head against her cheek, reminding herself of Papa Bear's strong, comforting arms, the way they wrapped around her in a hug that made all the world's troubles disappear. "Pippin," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. "Papa's strong, isn't he? Like a big, big oak tree." Mama Bear smiled gently, stroking Sister Bear's head. "The strongest, my sweet pea, the very strongest." Mama Bear, ever the beacon of calm in any squall, whether it was a small family tiff or a grand oceanic tempest, maintained a gentle, unwavering composure. Her heart, however, held its own quiet tension, a silent prayer whispered with every beat. She made sure the magnificent lighthouse lamp, a colossal gleaming jewel of light at the very top of their home, shone its brightest. She knew Papa Bear could not see the light from so far out in the storm, but she fussed with its enormous wick, polished its enormous lenses until they gleamed, and ensured its powerful beam cut through the driving rain and the thick mist, sweeping across the dark, turbulent waves with a steadfast, rhythmic promise. It was her own personal declaration, a profound act of faith across the churning waves, believing with all her heart that its light, unseen or not, would indeed guide her dear Papa Bear home, a symbol of the unwavering hope she held in her heart. Its steady sweep was a silent message, a whispered comfort, "And I am here, my love. We are waiting. Come home." Despite the miles and the furious raging storm separating them, a strong, invisible thread, woven from love, hope, and unwavering faith, connected Papa Bear and his family. He, out on the vast, tempestuous sea, battling the monstrous waves and the relentless wind, found strength not just in his powerful paws and his nautical skill, but in the imagined warmth of their laughter, the bright glow of their lighthouse home, and the silent, steady beat of their waiting hearts. He pictured Brother Bear's mischievous grin, Sister Bear's soft, cuddly hugs, and Mama Bear's serene smile, and each image was a renewed surge of energy, a whisper of courage in the teeth of the gale. They, safe within the lighthouse's sturdy, comforting walls, drew comfort from Mama Bear's unwavering hope and the shared conviction, spoken and unspoken, that Papa Bear, with his clever mind and kind heart, was indeed navigating his way back to them. They imagined his strong hands on the tiller, his brave eyes scanning the horizon, and they knew, with a certainty deeper than any fear, that he was fighting for them, just as they were waiting for him. The sounds of the storm outside, though terrifying, only served to highlight the profound peace and warmth within, a testament to the unbreakable bond that held them together. It was in these trying moments, when the world outside seemed to conspire to break them apart, that the deep, loving connection of their family truly shone. It was not a loud, boisterous connection, but a gentle, persistent glow, like the very light of the lighthouse itself. It was a powerful reminder that even the biggest storms eventually pass, for all storms, no matter how fierce, have a beginning and an end. And they pass especially quickly and are endured with much more courage when hearts are full of hope and kindness and an unbreakable love that can span any distance and brave any tempest. Papa Bear knew it, and his family knew it too, deep in their bones. And that, in the heart of the Grizzly Squall, was the greatest comfort of all. Chapter 4. The night swallowed the world whole, a churning ink-black abyss where sky and sea became one indistinguishable, terrifying roar. Papa Bear Mariner, a stout figure usually brimming with cheer and the salty scent of adventure, clung to the helm of his trusty vessel under honeycomb drifter, with a grip that turned his knuckles white as sea foam. Waves, colossal and menacing, rose from the depths like angry liquid mountains, their crests frothing with a wicked luminescence before crashing down with the force of 1,000 thunderclaps. Each deluge threatened to tear the little boat apart, to toss it like a lost toy into the insatiable maw of the tempest. The wind, a banshee's shriek, tore through the rigging, a relentless icy tormentor that whipped salt spray into Papa Bear's eyes, stinging them until they streamed. He was weary, oh so weary. Every muscle screamed in protest, protesting the endless battle, the bone-deep cold that had seeped into his very marrow, and the relentless, drenching wetness that left him shivering uncontrollably. His thick fur, usually a cozy insulation, was plastered flat, heavy with the ocean's chill. He had faced many a squall in his years at sea, navigated through treacherous fogs and tricky currents, but never, not once, had he encountered a storm with such raw, untamed fury. This was more than a storm. It was a beast, an ancient elemental rage, unleashed upon the fragile world. Just when his strength began to waver, just when the last vestiges of his famous mariner's grit threatened to unravel, a tiny, insidious voice whispered in the howling wind, a voice thin and cold as an icicle. "Give up, Papa Bear. There's no use. The sea has won this time. Rest now." His eyelids felt heavy, so heavy. His calloused paws ached with the effort of holding the tiller steady, of keeping in a honeycomb drifter, nose first into the monster waves. He closed his eyes for just a flicker, a desperate second of reprieve, and in that fleeting darkness, something miraculous happened. A vivid image, brighter than any lighthouse beam, flashed before his mind's eye. It wasn't the raging sea or the threatening sky. No, it was a memory, warm and utterly real. He saw Mama Bear's comforting smile, a gentle curve that always promised warmth and understanding, her eyes twinkling with a love as vast as the ocean he now fought. He heard Brother Bear's eager voice, full of curious questions about the mysterious deep, his small paw reaching out to touch Papa's weathered hand. And then he felt Sister Bear's soft, gentle hug, the way her little arms would wrap around his neck, a silent embrace that spoke volumes of pure, unconditional affection. This was it. This was his deep-down awakening. It wasn't a sudden burst of physical strength, for his body was still battered and worn. It was a surge of something far more powerful, a fierce determination that ignited in the deepest chambers of his brave bear heart. He wasn't just battling for himself, not just fighting to survive this relentless tempest. No, he was fighting to return to Thetham, to Mama Bear's steady love, to Brother Bear's bright questions, to Sister Bear's tender hugs. Their love, he realized with a profound clarity that cut through the storm's din, was his true anchor. It was the sturdy rope that held him fast, even when the world tried to pull him under. It was the compass that pointed him home, no matter how lost he felt. With this renewed purpose, a strange and subtle shift registered in the chaos around him. Was it wishful thinking? Or perhaps truly a faint lessening in the relentless ferocity of the wind? Or was that a ghostly pale luminescence, a mere whisper of grey, hinting at a lightning in the churning sky, like a secret promise hidden just beyond the oppressive blackness? It was a tiny, hopeful sign, almost imperceptible, yet it was there. A silent whisper in the storm's roar, and the worst might, just might, be starting to pass. Back at the cozy cottage, nestled deep within the whispering woods, the family felt the full, terrifying force of the storm outside. The windows, thick and sturdy though they were, rattled in their frames with a frantic, chattering clamor, as if 1,000 tiny teeth were gnawing at the glass. The wind, a mournful, hungry beast, whistled through the eaves and howled down the chimney, a chilling chorus that made their small, beloved home feel like a brave little ship, bobbing and swaying on a vast, stormy sea. Every gust was a thunderous shove, every shriek of the wind a stark reminder of the wild, untamed world beyond their sturdy walls. Mama Bear, ever the beacon of warmth and kindness, moved with a quiet grace through the flickering shadows cast by the roaring fire. Her movements were calm, deliberate, a silent testament to her unwavering strength. She gathered Brother Bear and Sister Bear close by the crackling hearth, the comforting heat a welcome embrace against the cottage's drafty corners. The cubs, usually so full of boisterous energy, were hushed, their small faces etched with concern for their papa out on the vast, unforgiving sea. Sister Bear clutched her warm teddy bear tightly, her lower lip trembling just a little. Brother Bear, usually so inquisitive, simply stared into the flames, his imagination painting terrible pictures of his papa battling sea monsters. Mama Bear saw the worry in their eyes, felt the tremor in Sister Bear's small hand, and knew what they needed more than anything else right then. Not fear, not fretting, but the power of remembrance, the comforting presence of love. "My dear cubs," she murmured, her voice soft as a lullaby, yet firm as a steady hand. "This storm is mighty indeed, but Papa Bear is mightier still, and he carries our love with him, always." Instead of dwelling on the storm's loudness, why don't we fill our hearts with the warmth of Papa? Let's share our fondest memories of him. What do you remember most about our wonderful Papa Bear? Sister Bear, snuggled into Mama's side, was the first to speak, her voice a tiny whisper against the storm's roar. I remember when Papa Bear taught me to skip stones on the pond. He said they were making wishes across the water, and he helped me find the perfectly flat ones." A small smile touched her lips, a fragile flower blooming in the storm. Brother Bear, eyes still fixed on the dancing flames, suddenly sat up straighter. "Oh, I remember when Papa showed me how to tie that special mariner's knot, the one that never comes undone. He said it was like our family, always strong and connected." His voice grew stronger, a flicker of his usual enthusiasm returning. "And remember when he made that funny silly face when I was sad about dropping my berry pie? He looked like a grumpy grizzly with a blueberry nose." Both cubs giggled, a tiny, brave sound that defied the howling wind. Mama Bear smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that chased away some of the shadows in the room. "Yes, my dears, Papa Bear's laughter is a wonderful sound, isn't it? And his clever solutions. Do you remember when the rain pipe clogged, and he used that long fishing pole to clear it out, like a great big fishing expedition for leaves?" She chuckled softly, the sound weaving a tapestry of warmth and shared joy. Papa Bear's heart is as big as his adventures, full of kindness and a loving spirit that truly makes our home shine. This act of remembering and sharing deepened their strong human connection, weaving a powerful invisible shield around them. The room, though still buffeted by the tempest, began to fill not with the chilling dread of the storm, but with a palpable comfort that defied the tempest outside. It was a comfort born of shared love, of cherished memories, of the unwavering belief in the goodness of their Papa. The fear was still a distant rumble, but the love was a vibrant, immediate warmth holding them close. Then Mama Bear had an idea, a gentle act of faith that would transcend the roaring wind and the crashing waves. "You know what else Papa Bear loves more than anything after a long day, especially a blustery one like this?" she asked, rising from the hearth. "His special honey nut soup, the one with extra carrots and a dollop of fresh cream." The cub's eyes lit up. "Papa's soup!" It was a legendary comfort in their home, a warm, fragrant promise of security and togetherness. "Can we help, Mama?" Sister Bear asked, her previous fear almost forgotten in the warmth of the thought. "Indeed, you can," Mama Bear replied, already moving towards the pantry. "Brother Bear, you can fetch the biggest pot. Sister Bear, you can pick out the plumpest carrots from the root cellar. We'll make it extra special, full of our love, so that when Papa Bear comes home, he'll feel its warmth right down to his toes." And so, as the storm raged outside, threatening to rip the very trees from the earth, the three bears in the cozy cottage embarked on a gentle act of faith and love. The sounds of clanking pots, the rhythmic chop-chop of carrots being prepared, the fragrant steam rising from the simmering broth filled the kitchen. It was a quiet act, full of purpose, a silent, powerful affirmation of their belief. They were quietly, deeply believing that soon, very soon, their beloved Papa Bear would be home to enjoy it. The aroma of simmering honey nut soup mingled with the scent of pine and hearth smoke, creating an oasis of hope in the heart of the storm. Back on the pitching deck of the honeycomb drifter, Papa Bear Mariner, now guided by his newly ignited hope, moved with a renewed resolve. His muscles still protested, but his spirit was uplifted, buoyed by the vivid images of his family. He noticed a flapping, tattered section of the mainsail, a critical vulnerability in the face of the relentless winds. With a grim determination, he began the arduous task of securing it, battling the wind's furious attempts to rip it further. It was a small but significant act of survival, born not just of necessity, but of the powerful desire to return home. He pulled a heavy rope, tying a knot with practiced hands, securing the frayed fabric. As he hauled on the line, feeling the strain in his back and shoulders, an inexplicable warmth began to spread through his chest, a feeling as gentle and comforting as a soft blanket on a cold night. It was a warmth that had nothing to do with the icy sea spray or the chilling wind. It was a profound, almost magical sensation, a feeling of being watched over, of being loved and cared for from afar. It felt as though gentle hands were reaching across the tumultuous expanse of water, offering encouragement, silently cheering him on. He paused, his breath fogging in the frigid air, and for a moment he felt a profound connection, as if he wasn't alone at all, but surrounded by the quiet, unwavering presence of his family. At that very same moment, snuggled by the crackling fire in their warm, soup-scented cottage, Mama Bear and the cubs felt a quiet wave of reassurance wash over them. The frantic rattling of the windows seemed to lessen, the howling wind outside seemed to recede, if only for a blessed moment, into a quieter sigh. A gentle peace, soft as a downy feather, replaced the sharp edge of their most urgent worries. It was an unspoken, collective sigh of relief, a deep knowing that settled in their hearts. It was as if their combined love, a powerful, invisible tether woven from threads of affection, memory, and unwavering faith, had reached across the stormy waters, spanning the miles that separated them. This tether, strong and true, connected them to Papa Bear, guiding him safely, steadily, through the tumultuous night. Their shared memories of his laughter, their quiet prayers for his safety, the warmth of the simmering soup, and the deep, abiding love they held for him, all converged into a silent beacon. This beacon pierced through the darkness of the storm, shining directly onto Papa Bear Mariner's weary but determined heart. The love in their hearts was a silent promise, an unshakable belief, whispering through the wind and waves. Once there will be a dawn beyond this storm, and Papa Bear, our dear Papa Bear, will be home with us, safe and sound. Chapter 5, The Heart of the Storm. The Stardust, a sturdy vessel with a heart of oak and sails as white as clouds, was no stranger to the mighty ocean. She had danced over gentle swells and braved many a squall, but on this night, the ocean roared louder than 1,000 lions, and the sky wept with a fury that shook the very stars. Captain Horatio Seaworthy, his grizzled beard flecked with sea spray and his oilskins slick with rain, stood firm at the helm, his knuckles white against the polished wood. This was not just a squall, this was a true tempest, a churning maelstrom of wind and water that sought to swallow the Stardust whole. The waves were not just large, they were colossal, liquid mountains that rose from the churning depths, their peaks frothing like angry teeth before crashing down upon the deck with the force of a thunderclap. Crash! Whoosh! The sound was deafening, a relentless assault that vibrated through the ship's timbers and deep into Captain Seaworthy's very bones. Each impact sent shivers down the Stardust's spine, rattling every loose plank and making the very air thick with salt and fear. Water streamed across the deck in rushing rivers, seeking every crack and crevice, threatening to drag the ship down into the cold, dark abyss. And the wind! It was a living, breathing entity, a monstrous, hungry wolf with an insatiable appetite. It howled, a long, mournful, terrifying wail that clawed at the sails, threatening to shred them into ribbons. It tore at the rigging, whipping the thick ropes like angry snakes, making them whistle and shriek in protest. Captain Seaworthy had to brace himself against the onslaught, leaning into the invisible force as if pushing against a solid wall. The air was so thick with spray, it felt like flying through a waterfall. His eyes, though stinging from the salt, scanned the chaotic scene, vigilant and unblinking. Any lesser mariner might have surrendered to despair, might have let fear grip their heart like an icy hand. But Captain Seaworthy was not just any mariner. He was a man woven from the same strong threads as the mighty oak of his ship, seasoned by countless sunrises and sunsets at sea. Fear had no purchase in his brave heart, not when there was work to be done, not when a ship and its precious cargo, the hopes of many, depended on his steady hand. He moved with a purposeful urgency, his movements efficient despite the ship's violent pitching and rolling. First he secured the loose rigging, his strong hands, calloused from years of hauling ropes, gripping the slick lines with practiced ease. Thwack! Thwack! And then went the thick knots as he pulled them tighter, ensuring that the sails, though battered, would hold their ground for just a little longer. He moved from one side of the deck to the other, a silhouette against the flashes of lightning that momentarily illuminated the tumultuous seascape, checking every tie, every fastening. He didn't just secure them, he talked to them. A soft, encouraging murmur only the storm could hear. Hold fast, my beauties. Just a little longer. Then, with the ship dipping dangerously into a deep, dark trough between two towering waves, he wrestled the helm, his muscles straining against the immense pressure of the ocean. The rudder groaned in protest, but Captain Seaworthy held it steady, guiding in the stardust, with an intuitive dance that only a true master of the sea could perform. He steered not just with his hands, but with his whole body, his feet sensing the subtle shifts in the ship's balance, his eyes predicting the next monstrous wave. "Up you go, my girl," he grunted, pulling hard as the bow lifted, climbing the next liquid mountain, moments before it crashed down again. Trash, and always the water. It poured into the deck, pooling faster than it could drain. He grabbed a sturdy wooden bucket, its rim worn smooth from countless uses, and began to bail. Scoop, swish, splash. He worked rhythmically, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his old joints aching with every movement. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every bucket of water flung back into the hungry sea was a small victory, a testament to his unwavering will. As he toiled, his mind, strangely, was not consumed by the immediate danger. No. As the storm raged and threatened, Captain Seaworthy's thoughts were anchored, not in the chaos surrounding him, but in the tranquil harbor of his home. He pictured Mrs. Seaworthy, her gentle smile, a warm sunbeam that chased away any shadow. He could almost feel the softness of her hand in his, see the patient twinkle in her eyes as she listened to his grand tales. That smile, he knew, was waiting for him. Then, young Lily, his precious daughter, with her bright, inquisitive eyes that held all the wonder of the world. He remembered her artwork, her drawings of ships sailing under rainbows, and her eager questions about distant lands. He could almost hear her little voice, full of joy and curiosity. And little Tom, his son, so full of boundless energy, waving goodbye from the cottage window, his small hand a fleeting promise of reunion. That eager wave, a tiny beacon of love, was pulling him home. These warm, vivid images were more than just memories. They were his guiding stars, brighter than any celestial body obscured by the storm clouds. They were the gentle hands that steadied his own, the soft voices that whispered encouragement over the howling wind. Each pull on a rope, each turn of the helm, each scoop of bailing water was infused with the thought of them. He wasn't just fighting the storm, he was fighting for them. He was enduring because of them. Their love was a blazing hearth in his heart, a warmth that spread through his weary limbs, chasing away the cold bite of the ocean spray. This intense struggle, waged alone against the vast, cold, indifferent sea, became a profound moment of deep awakening for Captain Seaworthy. He had faced storms before, but never had the connection to his family felt so utterly, overwhelmingly palpable. The warmth of their love, their unwavering hope, was felt more strongly than the biting wind that tore at his clothes, more powerfully than the crashing waves that sought to engulf his ship. It was an invisible, unbreakable thread, stretching across the turbulent waters, strengthening his spirit, making him realize that true courage wasn't just about facing danger, but about holding onto the light of love that waited for him, patiently, steadfastly on the shore. He would endure. He would come home. Meanwhile, back in their cozy seaside cottage, nestled on a cliff overlooking the tumultuous expanse of the ocean, Mrs. Seaworthy, Lily and Tom were also battling the storm, though in a different way. The wind rattled the windows, whoosh rattle, making the glass panes shiver like frightened puppies. The rain lashed against the roof with a drumming intensity, pitter-patter drum, a relentless rhythm that seemed to echo the turbulent emotions that tried to creep into their hearts. But inside, the cottage was a sanctuary of warmth and light. Mrs. Seaworthy, her face serene despite the worry lines that subtly etched themselves around her kind eyes, moved purposefully. "Come along, my dears," she called, her voice a comforting balm over the storm's din. "Let's make sure our little lighthouse shines extra brightly tonight." She lit extra candles, placing them carefully on the mantelpiece, the windowsill, and the sturdy oak table in the living room. Each flicker added to the soft golden glow, chasing away the encroaching shadows. The room seemed to expand, filled with a gentle, flickering radiance that pushed back against the darkness pressing in from outside. It wasn't just light, it was hope, made visible. Lily, ever helpful, brought out the softest, thickest blankets, patterned with cheerful nautical designs. anchors, lighthouses, and friendly whales. She draped one over the armchair where Tom was already curled up, looking a little wide-eyed at the storm's ferocity. Mrs. Seaworthy stirred a rich, dark cocoa in a simmering pot on the hearth, the sweet, comforting aroma filling the air, mingling with the scent of burning logs from the crackling fireplace. Pup, crackle, hiss. The fire danced and sang, a cheerful defiance against the storm's gloom. Soon they were settled, mugs of warm, steaming cocoa cradled in their hands, the blankets wrapped around them like warm hugs. Tom, initially subdued by the storm's noise, took a sip of his cocoa, a small, warm smile spreading across his face. Papa loves this cocoa," he mumbled, a sprinkle of chocolate on his upper lip. Mrs. Seaworthy smiled, her heart swelling with a mixture of tenderness and steadfast love. "He certainly does, my brave little sailor, and he knows we're thinking of him every sip of the way." She knew worry was a dangerous current, one that could pull them all down. Instead, she chose to navigate a different course, a course of unwavering hope. "Let's remember some of Papa's cleverest adventures, shall we?" she suggested, her voice soft and melodious, like the comforting lull of gentle waves. "Do you remember the time the old fishing net got tangled around the propeller, and he used nothing but a butter knife and a clever twist of logic to free it?" Lily giggled, her bright eyes sparkling in the candlelight. "And the time he used the very last bit of sail thread to mend a hole in his favorite old hat, just before the big village fair. And the time he convinced a grumpy old seagull to share his catch by singing him a sea shanty," Tom added, his imagination soaring, emboldened by the warmth and the stories. They told tale after tale, not just of his cleverness, but of his strength, his kindness, and his unwavering promise to always come home. They spoke of the sparkle in his eye when he talked about the sea, the booming laugh that filled the cottage, the gentle way he tucked them into bed. Each story was a stitch in the fabric of their love, knitting it tighter and stronger. Lily, inspired by the comforting tales, pulled out her worn crayon box and a fresh sheet of paper. With serious concentration, she began to draw. Her small hands moved swiftly, carefully, sketching a vibrant scene. First, a bright sweeping rainbow arched across the top of the paper, its colors bold and true. Beneath it, a sturdy ship, and to stardust, rode a calm blue sea, its sails full, heading straight for a little cottage on the shore. And in front of the cottage, 3 figures waved excitedly, Mrs. Seaworthy, Lily herself, and little Tom, all smiling, all waiting. It wasn't just a drawing, it was a prayer, a promise, a tangible expression of her innocent faith. Tom, meanwhile, having finished his cocoa, started to hum, a low, cheerful tune, one of Papa's favorite sea shanties. It was a tune about a brave captain and his loyal crew, battling the waves and always finding their way home. He didn't know the words, but the melody was ingrained in his heart, a joyful, rhythmic beat against the storm's discordant roar. They understood in their own simple, profound way that while Papa was facing a mighty challenge out there, their strong family love was a powerful anchor. It wasn't just an emotion, it was a force, an invisible, unbreakable thread stretching across the stormy waters, connecting them to him, drawing him gently back home, like a giant, loving magnet. It was their belief, their hope, their shared love, keeping him safe. The hours passed, marked by the dwindling candles and the quiet hum of the boy. The storm, which had seemed an eternal raging monster, slowly, imperceptibly, began to soften its roar. The relentless crash, whoosh, of the waves outside grew less frequent, less violent. The howling wolf of the wind began to sound more like a tired sigh, a weary whisper. The drumming rain tapered off, becoming a gentle drizzle, then almost nothing at all. The very air outside seemed to lighten, no longer heavy with fury. A subtle quiet began to descend, a hushed pause in nature's tempestuous symphony. Even the cottage, which had braced itself against the onslaught, seemed to relax. It was the first subtle sign of lessening, a tentative promise from the vast, dark ocean. The worst, it seemed, might soon be over. For Captain Seaworthy, battling the last remnants of the storm out on the open sea, and for his patient family ashore, their hearts full of love and unwavering hope, dawn, and with it, safety, was surely on its way. The invisible thread, though stretched taut, had held fast. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Home at last, heart full of love. As the first gentle rays of dawn, timid and tentative, peeked over the eastern horizon, painting the sky with the softest, dreamiest hues of sleepy pink and whisper gold, a profound transformation began. The furious, blustering storm, which had raged all through the long, dark night, shaking the little cottage and rattling its window panes, began to finally, thankfully, retreat. It didn't vanish in a sudden flash. No, instead, it sighed itself away, like a weary giant laying down its heavy burden. The wind, which had howled and shrieked with such a frightful fury, softened its voice to a mere sleepy whisper, rustling the remaining wet leaves on the oak tree outside. And the churning, monstrous waves, which had crashed and roared against the distant cliffs with such a mighty, thunderous sound, slowly, ever so slowly, began to calm their deep, rumbling roars, settling into a gentle, rhythmic lapping against the shore. Inside their cozy little cottage, still smelling faintly of wood smoke and the sweet, comforting scent of Mama Bear's chamomile tea, the small family remained huddled together. Mama Bear sat on the worn, comfy armchair, her strong arm wrapped protectively around young Cubby, who was nestled against her side, his small face still pale from the night's anxieties. Sweet Honey, the littlest one, lay curled like a sleepy kitten in Mama's lap, her thumb tucked firmly into her mouth, her eyes heavy-lidded but wide with a quiet anticipation. All three pairs of eyes, brown and hopeful, were fixed not on the retreating storm clouds, but on the distant clearing waters of the vast wide ocean. They watched and they waited, their hearts beating a soft, steady rhythm of hope against the lingering quiet of the storm. And then, just as the sun climbed a tiny bit higher, sending shimmering silver pathways across the newly calmed sea, a sight appeared that made every heart in that little cottage leap with a sudden joyous bound. Far, far out, almost a tiny speck against the enormous expanse of the ocean, a familiar, brave silhouette slowly, steadily, magically emerged from the lingering mists of dawn. It grew, little by little, then more quickly, becoming clearer with each passing minute. It was sturdy and strong, its mast standing tall against the brightening sky. It was Papa Bear's beloved ship, the Starlight, its name seeming to shimmer even from this distance, bravely, valiantly sailing towards the harbor, towards home. A collective sigh of relief, pure and profound, a breath held for what felt like an entire lifetime, filled the little home. It was a sound deeper than words, a sound of worries melting away like snow in the spring sun, hope brighter than the morning sun itself, a hope that sparkled like the dew on the freshly washed grass, finally, beautifully, gloriously washed over them, chasing away every last shadow of fear. Mama Bear let out a soft, choked sob of pure gratitude, pressing Cubby and Honey closer. Cubby wriggled with excitement, pointing with a trembling finger. "Look, Mama, look, it's him, it's Papa!" And little Honey, finally pulling her thumb from her mouth, whispered, "Papa, home." A new day had truly dawned, full of the promise of reunion. The journey from the cottage to the harbor felt both like an eternity and like the blink of an eye. Mama Bear, with Cubby bouncing excitedly beside her and Honey toddling along, holding tightly to her skirt, practically flew down the path. The salty air, freshly washed clean by the storm, invigorated them, but it was the sight of the Starlight, now undeniably real and docking gracefully, that truly propelled them forward. The ship, though sturdy, showed the marks of its perilous journey, salt streaks on its hull, ropes a little frayed, but it was there, undeniably safe. And then the moment arrived. Papa Bear, his strong, familiar figure emerging from the deck, stepped onto the worn wooden planks of the dock. He looked weary, yes, his fur a little ruffled, his eyes a little tired from the long, difficult voyage, but he was undeniably safe. And more than safe, he was dight home. The sight of his family, waiting with such hopeful, loving eyes, seemed to erase every ounce of his fatigue in an instant. Before he could even fully steady himself, his family rushed forward, a joyous, unstoppable wave of love and longing. It was a sight to behold, a beautiful tangle of hugs and happy tears. Mama Bear was the first to reach him, throwing her arms around his broad shoulders, holding him tight, as if to anchor him firmly to the earth after his battle with the wild sea. Her heart, which had been a tight, anxious knot for what felt like endless days, overflowed with such a profound, overwhelming gratitude that words couldn't begin to capture it. She buried her face in his shoulder, her own fur dampening with the tears she hadn't dared to shed until this very moment. Cubby, quick as a flash, darted around Mama's legs and wrapped his small arms around Papa Bear's sturdy knee, clinging on as if his life depended on it. He looked up, his big bright eyes shining with unshed tears and boundless relief. Papa Bear, you're here, you're really here," he bubbled, unable to contain the torrent of stories that had built up inside him. "The storm was so big, and we missed you so much. Mama kept the light on, just like you said." Sweet Honey, not to be outdone, gently tugged at Papa Bear's other leg, her tiny voice a soft, happy squeak. "Papa, hug," she demanded, stretching her little arms up. Papa Bear, with a deep, rumbling laugh that had been missing from the cottage for far too long, carefully scooped her up into his free arm, settling her against his chest. She nestled there, a sigh of utter contentment escaping her lips. Papa Bear, his voice a little hoarse, not just from the long journey and the salty spray of the ocean, but also from the sheer emotion of this moment, squeezed them all close. He looked from Mama Bear's tear-streaked beautiful face to Cubby's excited chatter, and then down at Honey, who was already drifting into a contented doze against his shoulder. "Oh, my dear ones," he murmured, his voice thick with love, "I thought of you every single moment. Through the highest waves and the darkest stretches of night, the thought of your warm smiles, Cubby's joyful shouts, Honey's sweet gurgles, and the steady, comforting light in our cottage window, it was that light, brighter than any star, that truly guided me through the darkest, most fearsome waves. It pulled me home." The walk back to their cozy cottage was slow and leisurely, a joyful procession. Papa Bear held Mama Bear's hand, while Cubby bounced ahead, every now and then turning to make sure Papa was still there, still real. Honey, now fully awake and feeling perfectly safe, rode on Papa Bear's shoulders, occasionally pulling gently on his ears and giggling. The world around them seemed brighter. The birds sang a happier tune, and even the air felt softer, warmer, now that their missing piece was safely returned. As they approached their familiar little home, a truly wonderful thing happened. The rich, comforting scent of Mama Bear's freshly baked bread, warm and yeasty and utterly irresistible, wafted out from the open kitchen door, mixing with the gentle aroma of the wood smoke from their chimney. Mama had, with her usual thoughtful foresight, popped a loaf into the oven the moment she saw the starlight on the horizon, knowing that there was nothing quite so welcoming as the smell of home-baked goodness. They entered the cottage, and the warmth enveloped them, a perfect contrast to the lingering chill of the storm outside. The kitchen table was already set, simply but lovingly, with their best earthenware plates and mugs. Mama Bear pulled the golden brown loaf from the oven, its crust crackling invitingly, and there, together, they shared a simple, comforting meal. Each bite of the warm, soft bread, slathered with sweet honey from their own bees, and each sip of Mama Bear's berry tea, tasted not just of flour and fruit, but of home, of safety, and of an unwavering, unbreakable love. The quiet, gentle hum of their laughter and the soothing murmur of shared stories replaced the memory of the storm's furious roar. Cubby recounted his adventures from the night, exaggerating the size of the thunderclaps and the bravery of his vigil by the window, while Honey chimed in with happy little sounds. Papa Bear, in turn, told them simplified tales of his voyage, of the clever fish he'd seen, and the friendly puffins that had escorted his ship through the calmer waters, carefully omitting the more harrowing details of the storm, knowing his children didn't need to carry those worries. Mama Bear listened, her heart full, occasionally interjecting with a soft, "My goodness," or a gentle squeeze of Papa Bear's hand. Their house, filled with such simple, profound joy, felt warmer, more precious, and more beautiful than it ever had before. It truly was, in every wonderful way, home. As the evening stars, like tiny scattered diamonds, began to twinkle, one by one, in the peaceful velvet sky, Papa Bear sat by the crackling fireplace. The flames danced and flickered, casting a warm golden glow across the cozy living room. His family was nestled close around him, like contented little bears in their den. Mama Bear sat beside him, her hand resting comfortably on his paw. Cubby lay stretched out on the plush rug in front of the fire, drawing imaginary maps of brave voyages, his eyes growing heavy. And sweet Honey, completely worn out from the day's excitement and the sheer relief of having her papa home, was fast asleep in Mama's arms, her little chest rising and falling with soft, even breaths. Papa Bear looked at each of their faces in the firelight. Mama Bear, strong and kind; Cubby, vibrant and curious; Honey, innocent and sweet. A deep, quiet sense of gratitude, like a warm, flowing river, washed over him. He had traveled to distant shores, seen wondrous sights and braved mighty waves, but in this moment, a profound, undeniable truth awakened within his heart. The greatest treasure wasn't found on any faraway island, nor beneath the deepest ocean, but right here. It was right here, in the gentle warmth of his home, in the soft, loving embrace of his family, in the quiet joy of simply being together. This was the true gold, the real treasure. The journey had indeed been perilous, full of challenges and frightening moments, but it had also been a powerful reminder for them all. It had reminded them of the extraordinary strength found in family bonds, woven together with threads of love and trust. It had shown them the profound importance of kindness, of thinking of one another, of keeping the light on, both literally and figuratively. And most of all, it had taught them the simple, yet powerful blessing of just being there for one another, through storms and sunshine, through good times and bad. Because, dear friends, that is what family truly means. And so, dear friends, our tale of Captain Bear and his brave, loving family comes to a peaceful, sweet, and wonderfully loving end. The storm may have roared with all its might, threatening to tear things apart, but love, pure and unwavering, always guides us home. Good night and sweet dreams to all of you, wherever you are in this wide, wonderful world. We truly hope this story brought a bit of warmth to your heart tonight, just like Papa Bear's return warmed his family's home. Tell us, where are you listening from tonight, in your own cozy corner of the world? And what part of Captain Bear's journey home, or his family's brave wait, touched your heart the most? Perhaps it was Mama Bear's steady light, or Cubby's brave watching, or Papa Bear's unwavering love for his home. Whatever it was, hold that warmth close as you drift off to sleep. Sleep tight, little bears.